Galactic predators. Thought humans were easy prey. They were wrong. Reaches its dramatic apex when Commander Vrock's hunting party is completely surrounded in Earth's forest. Their advanced technology disabled. Earth's military reveals itself with overwhelming force. As Vrock realizes the devastating truth, they were never the hunters but the hunted. Humanity's carefully laid, 60-year trap springs shut around the stunned Zargonians. The massive holographic display cast an eerie blue glow across the command deck of the Fang of Glory. Commander Vrock tilted his scaled head, examining the bipedal creature that rotated slowly in the projection. His 4 eyes narrowed, focusing on the creature's frail-looking limbs and soft, hairless skin. "This is our next trophy?" Vrock's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among the Zargonian species. "Science Officer Pella, surely you jest?" Pella, her scales a lighter shade of crimson than her commander's, stepped forward. Her movements were precise, deliberate, characteristic of her scientific training and temperament. The humans, Commander, are not to be underestimated simply because they lack our physical advantages. She manipulated the controls, zooming in on the humans' features. Their homeworld, Earth, has a significantly higher gravity than we're accustomed to. Their muscles, while appearing less developed, are dense and efficient. Vrock waved a clawed hand dismissively. "I've led 47 successful hunts across 17 systems. Pella, I know prey when I see it." He stalked around the hologram, his ceremonial hunting blades jangling at his belt. "These creatures have no natural armor, no claws, no venom glands. Their teeth couldn't puncture even the softest Zargonian hatchling scales." "The great hunt demands respect for all prey, Commander," Pela replied, her voice carrying the subtle harmonic tones of disapproval. "It is not merely about the kill, but about honor in the pursuit." The great hunt was more than sport to the Zargonians. It was religion, economy, and honor intertwined. For generations, they had traveled the stars, seeking worthy adversaries to hunt. The more challenging the prey, the greater the glory. Trophy collections adorned every Zargonian temple and household, physical representations of their prowess and dedication to their ancestral traditions. "I respect worthy adversaries," Vrock countered. "Not soft-skinned creatures barely out of their planetary cradle." He gestured to the wall of his command deck, where plasma-preserved specimens from a dozen worlds hung in display cases. "The Krolov, bull warriors of Betelgeuse, they were worthy. The silicon predators of Tau Ceti, magnificent challenges. But these, humans," he snorted, a sound like grinding stones. Pela accessed another file on her datapad. "There is another matter, Commander. The Galactic Council's Statute 42 specifically prohibits contact with species that haven't achieved stable interplanetary colonization. Humans have only established bases on their moon and neighboring planet. The Galactic Council," Vrock spat the words, "is controlled by the Andari and their allies, who would have us abandon our sacred traditions entirely. They fear the Zargonian Empire's strength." He turned his back on the hologram, facing the viewport where Earth hung like a blue-white gem against the blackness of space. 3 hunters. A small landing party. The Council need never know. "Commander, my decision is final," Vrock interrupted. "Prepare the hunting party. I will lead it myself, along with Krax and Zella. Their first great hunt will be memorable, if not particularly challenging." Pela hesitated, then bowed her head in the traditional gesture of deference. "As you command, but I recommend extreme caution. My analysis of their communication transmissions suggests they are highly adaptable and resourceful. Their gravity-forged bodies will make excellent trophies." Vrock finished. "Now go. We launch in 3 cycles." After Pela left, Vrock returned to studying the hologram. In his 47 hunts, he had never returned empty-handed. His collection was the envy of the Zargonian fleet. Adding a human specimen would be a simple matter, perhaps even boring, but completeness demanded he include representatives from all potentially interesting species. Little did he know that this hunt would change everything, not just for him, but for the entire balance of power in the galaxy. The landing craft descended silently toward Earth's moon, its cloaking technology rendering it invisible to the primitive human scanning systems. Commander Vrock checked his hunting gear one final time. Neural disruptor, paralysis darts, ceremonial blades, and the preservation unit for the trophy. Beside him, the younger hunters, Krax and Zella, practically vibrated with excitement. "Remember," Vrock instructed, "this is merely a collection mission, not a true hunt. We take a specimen and depart. No extended pursuit. No elaborate traps. These creatures aren't worth the energy expenditure." "Yes, Commander," they replied in unison, though their twitching mandibles betrayed their disappointment. Every young Zargonian dreamed of their first great hunt. The rituals, the challenge, the glory of return. Being told their first hunt would be a simple snatch and grab was clearly deflating. "Your true hunts will come soon enough," Vrock assured them. "Consider this. Practice." The craft touched down in the shadow of a lunar crater, far from the primitive human outpost visible on the horizon. The ship's systems automatically adjusted to the moon's weak gravity, compensating with subtle artificial gravitational fields to prevent the Zargonians from bouncing awkwardly across the surface. "We'll observe from here first," Vrock decided. "Study their patterns. Identify an isolated specimen for collection." For 3 Earth days, they watched. The lunar base was small, perhaps 30 humans rotating through various exterior activities in their cumbersome environmental suits. Vrock found their technology quaint, their movements inefficient. "They waste so much energy," he commented, watching a human struggling to set up some kind of scientific equipment. "Look how they fight against even their environmental protection. Primitive." On the 4th day, a small human shuttle departed the lunar base, heading toward Earth. Vrock made his decision. "We follow. Earth's atmosphere will provide better cover, and we'll have more specimens to choose from." The Zargonian craft shadowed the human shuttle at a discreet distance, its advanced systems easily compensating for the primitive evasive patterns the humans employed. Clearly, standard protocol, rather than any awareness of being followed. They entered Earth's atmosphere at night, over what Pela's briefing had identified as a region called North America. The landing craft's sensors detected a small settlement near a heavily forested area, perfect hunting grounds with minimal chance of detection. "We set down here," Vrock ordered, pointing to a clearing 2 kilometers from the settlement. "Activate full stealth protocols." As they emerged from the craft, the full force of Earth's gravity hit them, despite their ship's compensators. The real thing was different, heavier, more insistent. Vrock felt his muscles straining slightly, his breathing deepening to accommodate the increased oxygen demands. "Fascinating," he murmured, stretching his limbs experimentally. "Their world shapes them more than I anticipated." Krax and Zella seemed to be adapting more quickly, their younger bodies more responsive to the changing conditions. Good, Vrock thought. Let them enjoy the experience, even if the hunt itself would be unremarkable. They activated their personal cloaking fields and moved toward the settlement, following a crude dirt path through the forest. The night was alive with sounds, insects, nocturnal animals, the rustle of vegetation in the breeze. So different from the sterile environments of space, or even the carefully managed biomes of Zargonia. "Commander," Zella whispered, pointing ahead. "Structures." The settlement came into view, a collection of perhaps 20 dwellings, most dark at this hour. A few lights burned in windows, and what appeared to be a perimeter fence surrounded the compound. Primitive, but showing a basic awareness of defensive necessities. "We observe first," Vrock instructed. "Look for isolated dwellings, single occupants. We want a clean extraction." They settled into observation positions around the settlement's perimeter. The hours passed slowly, and Vrock found himself growing impatient. This wasn't how the great hunt was supposed to feel, this dull waiting, this lack of challenge. Dawn approached, the sky lightening almost imperceptibly at first. Movement began within the settlement, humans emerging from dwellings, engaging in what appeared to be morning rituals. There, Krax pointed to a dwelling set apart from the others, near the edge of the forest. Single life sign. Isolated location. Vrock nodded approvingly. Good eye. We move in, remember. Quick and clean. Neural disruptor first, then preservation field. No damage to the specimen. They approached the isolated dwelling with practiced stealth, their cloaking fields rendering them invisible to human eyes. The dwelling was small, constructed of processed vegetation. Wood. According to Pela's briefing. Primitive. But not without a certain clever efficiency. Vrock positioned his team. Krax at the rear exit. Zella watching the perimeter. Himself at the main entrance. He activated his neural disruptor, setting it to a frequency calibrated for human nervous systems. On my mark, he subvocalized through their communication implants. The door opened unexpectedly, and a human male stepped out, older than the holographic specimen they'd studied, with gray-streaked hair and weathered skin. He stretched, inhaling the morning air, then froze. The human's eyes narrowed, scanning the area where Vrock stood invisible. Impossible. Their cloaking technology was far beyond human detection capabilities. Yet the human was reaching back inside the dwelling, his hand emerging with a long metal object, some kind of primitive projectile weapon. Vrock realized. Now, Vrock commanded, activating his neural disruptor. Nothing happened. The human didn't collapse as expected. Instead, the human raised his weapon and fired, not randomly, but directly at Vrock's position. The projectile grazed Vrock's shoulder armor, the impact sending a shock through his system. Hostile engagement, Vrock shouted, abandoning stealth protocols. Subdue the specimen. What happened next would haunt Vrock's nightmares for years to come. The ground beneath them erupted in a series of controlled explosions, not powerful enough to kill, but perfectly calibrated to disorient. The human had somehow mined the approaches to his dwelling, without any signs visible to even Zargonian sensory equipment. More humans emerged from the trees, not from the settlement, but from camouflaged positions in the forest itself. They wore no uniforms, carried no matching weapons, yet moved with coordinated precision that spoke of military training. Fall back, Vrock ordered, his tactical mind racing to make sense of the ambush. Return to the craft. They retreated through the forest, but found their path blocked by primitive but effective barriers that hadn't been there before. Sharpened stakes, pit traps, more of the buried explosive devices. Each obstacle seemed specifically designed to funnel them in particular directions. They're hurting us, Zella realized aloud, her voice tight with pain from a projectile wound to her leg. Like animals. Impossible, Vrock growled. But he knew she was right. Somehow, these primitive humans had detected their presence, anticipated their movements, and prepared a coordinated response, all without any visible technology that could possibly match Zargonian capabilities. They fought their way through a small clearing, neural disruptors still failing to function properly. The humans kept their distance, using their primitive but surprisingly effective projectile weapons to maintain pressure without fully engaging. The neural nets must be malfunctioning, Krax suggested, taking cover behind a fallen tree trunk. Some kind of electromagnetic interference? Vrock had no answer. Nothing in Pela's briefing had suggested the humans possessed such capabilities. Had the science officer known more than she'd shared? Had he been set up to fail? A new sound cut through the forest, a rhythmic chopping that grew louder by the second. From above the tree canopy, a primitive aerial vehicle appeared, rotating blades keeping it aloft, weapon systems visible on its undercarriage. Ground position confirmed. A voice boomed from the vehicle, speaking perfect Zargonian. Targets contained. Phase 2 initiated. The implications hit Vrock like a physical blow. Not only had they been detected, they'd been expected. The humans knew their language, their tactics, their technology. This was no primitive species ripe for an easy hunt. This was a carefully laid trap, and they had walked right into it. The aerial vehicle discharged a burst of energy, not destructive, but a precise electromagnetic pulse that caused their cloaking fields to flicker and fail. Exposed now, Vrock saw dozens of humans converging on their position, weapons trained, expressions grim but not fearful. Not fearful at all. And in that moment, Commander Vrock, veteran of 47 successful hunts across 17 systems, realized a terrible truth. They were not the hunters here. They were the prey. The electromagnetic pulse had disabled more than just their cloaking technology. Vrock's neural disruptor was completely non-functional, and his communications implant emitted only static when he tried to contact the Fang of Glory. Even his exoskeletal armor's power assist functions were offline, leaving him to bear Earth's punishing gravity with only his natural strength. "Surrender your weapons," came the command in Zargonian, broadcast from multiple directions simultaneously. "You are surrounded." Pride warred with survival instinct in Vrock's mind. No Zargonian commander had ever surrendered to a lesser species. It would be a disgrace beyond imagining. Yet, his tactical assessment was clear. They were outmatched, outmaneuvered, and operating in an environment that the humans had turned to their advantage with disturbing efficiency. "Commander?" Zella's voice was strained. Her leg wound seeping ichor despite the emergency sealant she'd applied. "Your orders?" Before Vrock could respond, a new sound cut through the forest, a high-pitched whine that seemed to penetrate directly into his brain. His muscles seized involuntarily, and he collapsed to the ground. Beside him, Krax and Zella similarly fell, their bodies convulsing. Through pain-blurred vision, Vrock saw humans approaching, wearing what appeared to be simple cloth and polymer garments. No powered armor, no obvious technology beyond their hand weapons. Yet they moved with absolute confidence, seemingly unconcerned that their Zargonian captives might suddenly recover and tear them apart with superior strength. "Neural systems successfully disrupted," one human reported, kneeling beside Vrock's immobilized form. "Temporary paralysis holding, no permanent damage to the specimens." Specimens. The human had called them specimens. The irony wasn't lost on Vrock, even through the haze of pain and humiliation. "Transport ready," another human confirmed. "Let's move them before the effect wears off." Vrock felt himself being lifted, carried by multiple humans compensating for his weight. His consciousness flickered, darkness creeping in at the edges of his vision. When he awoke, he was in a sterile white room, restrained on an examination table calibrated to his Zargonian physiology. Impossible. Humans shouldn't have had data on Zargonian biological systems. "Commander Vrock," a voice addressed him in perfect Zargonian. "Can you understand me?" A human female stepped into his field of vision. She wore a simple dark uniform with insignia he didn't recognize. Her hair pulled back severely from her face. Nothing about her appearance suggested the technological sophistication that would explain how she'd neutralized 3 Zargonian hunters with their advanced equipment. "How do you know my name?" Vrock demanded, his voice weaker than he'd intended. "How do you speak our language?" The human's expression remained neutral. "We've been expecting you, or someone like you, for quite some time. My name is General Anna Baker, Earth Unified Space Defense Command. You're currently in our Watchdog 1 facility, approximately 3 kilometers beneath the surface." Beneath the surface. No wonder their landing sensors hadn't detected any significant human military presence. They had been looking in the wrong direction. "Where are my hunters?" Vrock asked. "Being treated for their injuries," Baker replied. "Unlike you, Commander, We don't consider sentient beings from other worlds to be collectible trophies. The rebuke stung more than Vrock wanted to admit. The Great Hunt is a sacred tradition that violates at least 17 Galactic Council statutes, Baker interrupted, including Statute 42, prohibiting contact with pre-interplanetary species. Except, of course, we're not actually pre-interplanetary, are we? She touched a control panel, and one wall of the room transformed into a viewing screen. It showed Earth orbit and the Fang of Glory, surrounded by what appeared to be dozens of small human spacecraft. Their designs, unlike anything Vrock had seen in their primitive settlements. Your ship is currently contained, Baker explained. We've deployed a localized disruption field that's preventing their weapon systems from targeting our vessels. They can still communicate, however, which brings me to my next point. She touched another control, and Vrock heard Science Officer Pella's voice. Commander Vrock, if you're receiving this, please respond. The humans have established communication and are demanding our surrender. They claim to have you and the hunting party in custody. They've deployed some kind of technology that's preventing our systems from functioning properly. Please advise. Baker silenced the transmission. Your science officer seems concerned. Perhaps she had reservations about this hunt that you should have heeded. Vrock's mandibles clicked in agitation. This is impossible. Human technology is primitive. Your species barely reached your moon. You cannot have developed countermeasures to Zargonian systems. And yet, here we are. Baker gestured around the room. Your neural disruptors didn't work because we've been studying Zargonian technology for 60 years. Commander, ever since your species first sent hunting parties to Earth and mistakenly believed no one noticed when people went missing. 60 years. The implications were staggering. Humans had been aware of extraterrestrial contact for decades, had somehow captured and reverse-engineered Zargonian technology, and had kept their advancements completely hidden from galactic observation. We developed in secret, Baker continued, as if reading his thoughts. While presenting the face of a primitive, emerging species to the galaxy, we built our defenses underground, in deep ocean facilities, on the far side of our moon. We salvaged what we could from the hunters who came before you, studied their technologies, and prepared. For what? Vrock asked, though he was beginning to understand the terrible answer. For the day when your kind decided we'd make good trophies, Baker's voice hardened. For the day we'd need to defend ourselves against species who view us as prey, rather than potential allies. A new human entered the room, male, wearing different insignia than Baker. He spoke briefly to her in their native language, then turned to Vrock. I'm Ambassador Jason Torres. He introduced himself, also speaking fluent Zargonian. I'll be boarding your vessel to discuss terms with your crew. Terms? Vrock's pride reasserted itself. Zargonians do not negotiate with prey. Torres finished for him. I think we've established that the traditional relationship you anticipated has been somewhat reversed. But to be clear, Commander, we're not hunting you. We're ending the hunt, permanently. Torres approached the examination table, studying Vrock with what appeared to be genuine curiosity, rather than malice. Your science officer has been cooperative, he noted. She's provided valuable context about Zargonian culture and your place in the galactic community. It seems she had significant reservations about this expedition. Vrock felt a surge of betrayal. Had Pella known all along? Had she tried to warn him in her subtle way, mentioning Earth's gravity, human adaptability, the Galactic Council statutes? What do you want? Vrock finally asked, the question bitter in his mouth. Recognition, Torres answered simply. Humanity is claiming its place in the galactic community, effective immediately. We'll be petitioning for full membership in the Galactic Council, with all the protections and responsibilities that entails. The Council will never accept a species that has hidden its true technological level, Vrock countered. Deception violates the foundational principles of deception. Torres raised an eyebrow. Like hunting expeditions that violate Statute 42. Like presenting yourselves as explorers while really assessing worlds for potential trophies. The Zargonian Empire's interpretations of council principles have always been flexible when it suits your purposes. He was right, and Vrak knew it. The Zargonian representatives to the council had spent generations finding loopholes in galactic law to preserve their hunting traditions. We have documented evidence of 17 species violations by Zargonian hunting parties over the past 6 decades. Torres continued. Species that, like us, were deemed primitive enough to hunt with impunity. The difference is, we fought back, and we're fighting for them too. Baker stepped forward again. Your ship has 1 hour to power down weapon systems and prepare to be escorted to the Galactic Council's neutral station in the Arcturus system. If they refuse, we will disable the vessel and tow it there. You're bluffing, Vrak said, but without conviction. You can't possibly have weapons capable of... We reverse-engineered Zargonian shielding 15 years ago. Baker cut him off. Your offensive capabilities 12 years ago, and we've improved on both. Would you like a demonstration? The calm certainty in her voice left no room for doubt. Vrak had led his crew into a trap centuries in the making, all because he'd underestimated a species based on superficial observations. I will advise my crew to comply, he conceded finally, the words like acid on his tongue. Torres nodded, seemingly satisfied. I'll be departing for your ship in 30 minutes. When I return, we'll begin preparations for the council hearing. He paused at the door. For what it's worth, Commander, this outcome was never inevitable. Had you approached Earth with respect rather than as hunters, you might have found willing allies instead of determined adversaries. After they left, Vrak lay in silence, his mind racing through the implications. The Great Hunt had sustained Zargonian culture for millennia. Their place in the galactic hierarchy was defined by their prowess as apex predators. If humans revealed the truth to the Council, worse. If humans demonstrated technological parity or superiority after being underestimated for so long, the power balance would shift irrevocably. And it was his fault, his arrogance, his dismissal of Pela's warnings, his certainty that humans were simple prey. For the first time in his life, Commander Vrak understood fear as his potential trophies had experienced it. And it was a revelation that would change him, and his entire species, forever. Ambassador Torres approached the Fang of Glory in an unarmed transport vessel, a deliberate choice to demonstrate humanity's peaceful intentions despite their overwhelming tactical advantage. Through the viewport, he could see the Zargonian crew watching his approach, their body language, even alien as it was, betraying their confusion and concern. Science Officer Pella met him in the docking bay, her scales shifting through subtle color patterns that his training identified as anxiety tempered with scientific curiosity. Ambassador Torres, she greeted him formally. I am Science Officer Pella, acting commander in Vrak's absence. We did not anticipate this level of development from your species. Few do, Torres acknowledged, following her through the corridors of the alien vessel. It's been to our advantage. The ship's design was both beautiful and predatory, curved lines interrupted by sharp angles, like the evolutionary form of some ancient oceanic hunter. The crew they passed watched Torres with multifaceted eyes, mandibles clicking in what his cultural briefings had identified as expressions of agitation or disbelief. They entered the command deck, where a dozen Zargonian officers waited in rigid postures. The holographic display that had once shown human anatomical data now displayed the swarm of Earth vessels surrounding them, a pointed reminder of their precarious position. I'll be direct, Torres began, standing at the center of the room with practiced diplomatic confidence. Commander Vrock led an illegal hunting expedition to Earth in violation of Galactic Council Statute 42. We have taken him and his hunting party into protective custody. Protective? One officer challenged, stepping forward. Yes, Torres replied evenly. We're protecting them from making an even more serious mistake. And we're protecting the 17 other species who have been illegally hunted by Zargonian parties over the past 60 Earth years. He activated a small device he'd brought aboard, which projected its own hologram, documentation of previous Zargonian hunts, complete with locations, dates, and species classifications, all illegal under Council law. Humanity has been aware of extraterrestrial contact since your first hunters arrived decades ago, Torres explained. Rather than announcing ourselves prematurely, we studied, prepared, and documented. We recovered your technology from failed hunting expeditions. We learned your languages. We monitored your communications. And we protected ourselves. Pella moved closer to the holographic evidence, her scientific training clearly driving her to assess its authenticity. These records appear genuine, she reluctantly confirmed to her crew. The dating protocols match our own expedition logs. Humanity is hereby formally announcing its presence to the galactic community, Torres continued. We will be petitioning the Galactic Council for full membership, with the right to represent not only ourselves, but the other species targeted by illegal hunting expeditions. A ripple of communication passed through the Zargonian crew, subvocal frequencies that Torres pretended not to detect with the enhanced hearing technology concealed in his seemingly simple attire. Your vessel will be escorted to the Arcturus Neutral Station for an emergency council session, he informed them. Commander Vrock and the hunting party will be transported separately and reunited with you there. And if we refuse? The same challenging officer asked. Torres met the Zargonian's 4 eyes steadily. Then we demonstrate why that would be unwise. General Baker's voice came through the communication system. Ambassador, perhaps a small demonstration would be helpful at this juncture. Before any Zargonian could react, every system on the command deck shut down simultaneously. Emergency lighting activated, casting the room in a blood-red glow. 10 seconds later, everything returned to normal. That was a localized electromagnetic pulse, calibrated specifically to Zargonian technology. Torres explained. We can deploy it ship-wide if necessary, leaving you dead in space. We would prefer cooperation. Pella stepped into the tense silence that followed. We will comply. Ambassador, as acting commander, I authorize this course of action. She turned to her crew. Prepare the ship for escort to Arcturus. Power down weapon systems as requested. The challenging officer's scales darkened in what Torres recognized as anger, but he made no further objections. Hierarchy was deeply ingrained in Zargonian culture, and Pella's authority, while temporary, was legitimate in Vrock's absence. A wise decision, Torres acknowledged. May I ask, Science Officer Pella, did you have concerns about this expedition from the beginning? Pella's scales shifted through several colors before settling. I suggested caution. Commander Vrock's reputation as a hunter is legendary among our people. 47 successful hunts had perhaps made him overconfident. 48, if you count this one, Torres said quietly, though not in the way he anticipated. No, Pella agreed. Not in the way any of us anticipated. She hesitated, then added, The Great Hunt has defined our culture for millennia. Ambassador, its loss will not be easily accepted. We're not asking you to abandon your culture, Torres clarified. Only to direct it toward non-sentient species, in accordance with Council law. The galaxy is vast. Surely there are enough challenges to satisfy Zargonian hunters without targeting emerging civilizations. Perhaps, Pella conceded, though her tone suggested skepticism. Will Commander Vrock and the others be treated fairly? They'll be treated with the same respect we'd expect for humans in a similar situation, Torres assured her. Unlike some, we don't categorize sentient beings as trophies to be collected. The barb landed as intended, causing subtle color changes in the scales of several officers. Good, Torres thought. Let them feel uncomfortable. Let them begin to see how their traditions appeared to those they had hunted. I will return to my vessel now, Torres announced. We depart for Arcturus in 2 hours. Please make any necessary preparations. As he turned to leave, Pella spoke again. Ambassador, there is something you should know. The Zargonian Empire is not the only hunter species in the galaxy. There are others who would view your world as we did. Torres paused. We're counting on it. Science Officer Pella. Earth has been preparing defenses against all known predatory species. Your expedition simply accelerated our timetable for revealing ourselves. He left them with that troubling thought, returning to his transport with the confidence of a diplomat who knew he held all the leverage. As his vessel detached from the fang of glory, Torres allowed himself a small smile. First contact had gone exactly according to humanity's carefully laid plans. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the great amphitheater of Arcturus Station. Representatives from over 300 species filling the tiered seating around the central podium. The architecture was deliberately inclusive, atmospheric barriers separating incompatible breathing requirements, gravity plates adjusted for different physiological needs, translation fields ensuring seamless communication across thousands of languages. Commander Vrock stood with Science Officer Pella and the rest of the Fang of Glory's command crew in the respondents' area, conscious of the stares from the assembled representatives. Never in recorded history had Zargonians been called to answer for violations of hunting statutes. Their empire's influence had always protected them from such scrutiny. Until now. Across the chamber, Ambassador Torres led a small delegation of humans, the first official human presence in galactic governance. They appeared calm, prepared, disturbingly confident for a species making its first appearance before the Council. The Andari High Counselor, Tevik, called the session to order. The Andari, silicon-based life forms with crystalline exoskeletons, had led the Council for generations, their natural longevity and commitment to legal precision making them ideal administrators of galactic law. This emergency session has been called to address 2 significant matters, Tevik began, voice resonating through the translation field. First, the alleged violations of Statute 42 by Zargonian hunting expeditions. Second, the petition of the species known as humans for recognition and council membership. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Most representatives were seeing humans for the first time, assessing these newcomers with varying degrees of curiosity, skepticism, or concern. Ambassador Torres, as the petitioning party, you may present your case first. Torres stepped to the central podium, activating a holographic display that expanded to fill the air above the chamber. It showed Earth, not as it appeared to casual galactic observation, but as it truly was. Orbital defense platforms disguised as communication satellites, lunar bases hidden beneath regolith, massive underwater facilities housing shipyards and research centers. Honored council members, Torres began. Humanity comes before you not as a newly discovered species, but as one that has been aware of the galactic community for over 60 years. We have observed, learned, and prepared, not by choice, but by necessity. The hologram shifted to show documented evidence of Zargonian hunting parties on Earth across decades, ships landing, humans being taken, occasional scenes of resistance. The dates were clearly marked, establishing a pattern that even the most skeptical council member couldn't dismiss. The Zargonian Empire has systematically violated Statute 42 by hunting sentient beings on worlds designated as pre-contact. Torres continued. Not just on Earth, but on 17 other worlds whose inhabitants lacked the means to defend themselves effectively. More evidence appeared. Logs from recovered Zargonian vessels. Trophy collections documented in detail. genetic samples from preserved specimens that matched emerging species under Council protection. When the first Zargonian hunters came to Earth, humanity was indeed primitive by galactic standards, Torres acknowledged. But we learned. Each incursion provided technology we could study, reverse engineer, and improve upon. We kept our advancements secret, presenting the face of a developing pre-contact world while building our defenses. He gestured to his small delegation. We stand before you today not seeking revenge, but justice, not just for ourselves, but for all species targeted by illegal hunting expeditions. We petition for full council membership, with all the responsibilities that entails, including the right to represent those who cannot yet represent themselves. The evidence was compelling, presented with a precision that suggested long preparation. Torres wasn't just making a case, he was executing a strategy decades in the making. When he finished, Tevik turned to the Zargonian delegation. Commander Vrock, as the principal respondent in this matter, how do you answer these charges? Vrock stepped forward. His movement slightly labored from injuries sustained during the capture. He had spent the journey to Arcturus in silent contemplation, wrestling with the implications of humanity's revelations, not just for himself, but for his entire species. High Counselor, he began, his voice carrying the formal tones of Zargonian diplomatic speech. I cannot deny the evidence presented. My expedition to Earth was indeed in violation of Statute 42, as were the previous expeditions documented by the humans. Gasps and clicks of surprise echoed through the chamber. A Zargonian admitting fault was unprecedented. The Great Hunt has been central to Zargonian culture since before we achieved space travel, Vrock continued. When we joined the galactic community, we interpreted council statutes in ways that allowed our traditions to continue. I believed, as many of my people still do, that non-spacefaring species were legitimate prey. He turned to face the human delegation directly. I was wrong. The humans have demonstrated that our assessment of their capabilities was fundamentally flawed. They have also shown that they could have destroyed my ship and crew, but chose restraint instead. Science Officer Pella stepped forward to join him. If I may add, High Counselor, my scientific assessment supports Commander Vrock's statement. The humans have achieved technological parity with established council species, while maintaining the appearance of a pre-contact civilization. This suggests not only remarkable scientific aptitude, but strategic patience that should be respected. Tevik's crystalline features remained impassive as they considered these statements. The Council recognizes the Zargonian admission of statute violations. This is a significant moment in Council history. They turned back to Torres. Ambassador, what remedy does humanity seek? Torres's expression remained diplomatic, but there was no missing the satisfaction in his eyes. Humanity requests three things. First, immediate cessation of all hunting activities targeting sentient species, regardless of their technological development. Second, full disclosure of all previous hunting expeditions, so that affected species can be identified and, where possible, contacted and assisted. Third, humanity's immediate provisional admission to the Council, with full membership to follow standard evaluation protocols. The chamber erupted in discussion. Council membership was typically a lengthy process involving years of observation and evaluation. Immediate provisional admission was almost unheard of. Silence, Tevik commanded, and the chamber quieted. These requests are extraordinary. However, the circumstances are equally extraordinary. They turned to the Zargonian delegation. Do you accept these terms? Vrock looked to Pella, who gave the subtle mandible movement that signified agreement. We accept, he declared. The Zargonian Empire will comply fully with all requirements. Then I call for a council vote on the human petition, Tevik announced. The voting process was swift by council standards, less than one Earth day. The result was decisive. Earth would receive provisional council membership, with a path to full membership contingent on continued compliance with Council protocols. As the session adjourned, Vrock approached Torres in the antechamber. For a moment, they regarded each other in silence, predator and prey, roles now irrevocably altered. "Your species has changed the balance of power in the galaxy today," Vrock said finally. "Not through conquest, but through patience and preparation. It is humbling." "It wasn't our first choice," Torres replied. "We would have preferred peaceful first contact, an exchange of knowledge and culture. Your people made that impossible." "Yes," Vrock acknowledged. "And now we must live with the consequences." He hesitated, then added, "The Great Hunt will not end easily among my people. There will be resistance, perhaps even rogue hunting parties that defy the new restrictions. We're counting on you and Science Officer Pella to lead the change," Torres said, "and to understand that any future hunting expeditions to Earth will end less diplomatically than this one." The threat was clear, but delivered with the same calm confidence that had characterized all of humanity's actions. Not boastful, not aggressive, simply stating facts. "There is one more thing you should know," Vrock said, lowering his voice. "The Zargonians are not the most dangerous hunters in the galaxy. There are others who will see your emergence as a challenge, rather than a warning. The Krathak, the Volus Dominion, the Masari Clutch, all have hunting traditions that make the Zargonian Great Hunt seem tame by comparison." Torres nodded, unsurprised. "We've been preparing for them too, Commander. Every Zargonian hunter that came to Earth provided new information, new technology, new insights into galactic predatory species. We've been building defenses against threats we haven't even met yet." For the first time, Vrock felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's environmental controls. The humans hadn't just outmaneuvered his hunting party. They had been using the Zargonians to prepare for even greater threats. The strategic depth was astounding. "Then I almost pity the next species that mistakes humans for easy prey," Vrock said. Torres allowed himself a small smile. "So do I, Commander. So do I." As they parted ways, Vrock returned to the Zargonian delegation with a profound sense of transformation. His people would need to find a new way forward, one that honored their traditions, while respecting the new galactic reality that humanity had forced them to confront. The Great Hunt would continue, but never again as it had been. The predators had become cautious, the prey had revealed themselves as equals, and the galaxy would never be the same. Back aboard the Fang of Glory, preparing for the journey home, Vrock stood before the wall of specimens that had once been his greatest pride. One by one, he deactivated the preservation fields, allowing the organic material to begin its natural decomposition. These were no longer trophies to be celebrated, but reminders of a flawed understanding that had nearly led his crew to disaster. "Commander," Pella's voice came from behind him. "The Council has transmitted the full requirements for compliance with the hunting restrictions. They're extensive." "As they should be," Vrock replied, not turning from his task. "We have much to atone for." "The crew is struggling to understand what happened," she continued. "Many see this as a humiliation rather than a correction." Now Vrock did turn, meeting her 4 eyes with his own. "Then they haven't learned what I have, Pela. We were not defeated by superior weapons or technology alone. We were defeated by our own arrogance, by our certainty that soft skin and the absence of natural weapons meant weakness." He gestured to the empty preservation cases. "The humans could have killed us all and been justified under Council self-defense statutes. Instead, they showed restraint, planning, and foresight that we would do well to emulate." Pella's scales shifted to the blue-green of thoughtful consideration. "You've changed, Commander." "Yes," he agreed simply. "As must we all." He moved to the command console, bringing up the navigational display for their return journey. "Set course for Zargonia. We have a difficult message to deliver to the High Hunt Masters. As the Fang of Glory departed Arcturus Station, Vrock found himself looking at the stars differently than he had before. For countless generations, Zargonians had viewed the galaxy as a vast hunting ground, its countless worlds filled with potential trophies. Now, he saw it as a community, diverse, complex, and no longer divided simply into predator and prey. On Earth, the revelation of humanity's true technological level and their admission to the Galactic Council was met with mixed reactions. For the small percentage of humans who had been aware of the secret space program and the defensive preparations, it was the culmination of decades of work. For the rest, it was a shock that would take years to fully process. General Baker stood in the command center of Watchdog 1, watching real-time feeds as the first official council representatives arrived openly on Earth. The secret was out, and humanity's isolation had ended forever. "Was it worth it?" Ambassador Torres asked, joining her at the observation window. "All the secrecy, the hidden development, the resources diverted to defense?" Baker considered the question seriously. "We'll never know what would have happened if we'd announced ourselves to the galaxy before we were ready. But looking at the fate of the other species the Zargonians hunted," she let the thought hang incomplete. "We did what was necessary," Torres agreed. "And now we have a voice at the table, protection under council law, and the respect, if not the friendship, of species that might otherwise have seen us as nothing more than interesting specimens. The Zargonians won't be the last to underestimate us," Baker noted. Commander Vrock mentioned several other hunting species. Torres smiled grimly. "Let them come. Every encounter makes us stronger, more prepared. And now we have allies, including reformed Zargonians like Vrock and Pella, who recognize the value of cooperation over predation." Baker nodded, turning her attention back to the diplomatic proceedings on the surface. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage not as newcomers, but as a force to be reckoned with, a species that had turned the tables on those who thought them easy prey. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same again. In the years that followed, humanity's influence in the Council grew steadily. Their unique perspective, having developed in secret while under periodic threat, made them natural advocates for emerging species and reformers of outdated statutes that privileged established powers. Commander Vrock, against all expectations, became a leading voice for reform within Zargonian society. The Great Hunt continued, but redirected toward non-sentient challenges, extreme environments, synthetic combat scenarios, and cooperative expeditions with former prey species now recognized as equals. And on distant worlds where other hunting species gathered to plan their expeditions, a new caution entered their calculations. The legend of the humans, the prey that had turned the tables, spread throughout the predatory cultures of the galaxy. One simple message echoed across the stars, changing calculations and recalibrating risk assessments wherever it was heard. "Beware of Earth. They are not prey. They are waiting for you." The galactic predators had thought humans were easy prey. They were wrong, and the galaxy was better for it.